Putin thinks he is winning the Ukraine war, but the facts are crushing those lies a little more each day. His generals present Putin with maps showing victory every morning. Advance on 4 fronts. Crimea is safe. The plan is working. According to Financial Times sources, Putin believes his army will capture all of Donbass by autumn. But Russia's offensive bubble burst on June 8, 2026, because the current picture on the Russian armed forces front line resembles not a step-by-step advancing offensive machine, but rather a heavy and cumbersome body being dragged into an operational deadlock. On June 8, 2026, the data shared by Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, numerically documented whose hands the initiative on the ground has passed into. Since the beginning of the year, an area exceeding 600 square kilometers has returned to Ukrainian control. This figure shows that fortifications prepared over months of pouring concrete, kilometers of anti-tank trenches, and minefields have been overcome by modern tactics. Looking only at May's activity, we observe that the Ukrainian army recaptured approximately 100 square kilometers more than it lost, achieving positive gains for 2 consecutive months. These figures, also confirmed by open-source intelligence platforms, prove that the old Soviet military doctrine based on massed armored advances has been rendered helpless against technology-equipped flexible infantry maneuvers. When we compare today with past rates of advance, the erosion in offensive capacity becomes much more clearly visible. According to statistics compiled from the field by the Institute for the Study of War, the Russian army, which advanced 1,619 square kilometers between January and May 2025, could only manage a 104 square kilometer regional steppe in the same period of 2026. This 94% contraction in offensive capacity indicates that the army is experiencing serious exhaustion in its forward movement capability. Moreover, the loss of 116 square kilometers against a mere 23 square kilometer advance in April is one of the most concrete signs that defensive lines have begun to buckle. The army that was advancing dozens of square kilometers per day in 2025 is now losing net territory in 2026, and Putin no longer has the power to stop it. What is happening on the Zaporizhia front reflects this operational vulnerability in all its starkness. The 79th, 80th and 95th Brigades deployed in the region are executing a highly dynamic offensive formation that advances through corridors opened from the air by autonomous devices rather than cumbersome armored columns. Stepnohirsk was brought under control on May 18th and Mala Tokmachka on May 20th using this method. The clearing of a 46 square kilometer area in a single day on May 29th alone exposed the gaps in Moscow's defensive construct. Furthermore, the city of Kupiansk, which Russian Chief of General Staff Gerasimov had claimed with great confidence was under their control, quietly changed flags after a 6-month attrition process. Large parts of Dnipropetrovsk's administrative boundaries were cleared of enemy elements, leaving only 3 small villages remaining to be cleared. Alongside territorial losses, the human cost of the advance has also turned into an unbearable price for Russia. According to analytical organizations Infographics, while an average of 67 personnel were lost for every 1 square kilometer of gain in autumn 2025, this number has been found to have risen to 200 by May 2026. The tripling of the casualty rate within 6 months reveals how inefficient classical assault methods have become against modern defense systems. In an equation where monthly casualty estimates are reaching the 35,000 level, the fact that the number of new contract soldiers joining the army remains at around 27,000 is creating a continuously growing and unfillable personnel gap in the field. The inability of the 60,000-strong force deployed on the Kostiantynivka line to make any meaningful advance for 8 months documents that units are stuck in their positions. The heirs of the Red Army that advanced 1,600 kilometers in 4 years during World War II can today only create a depth of barely 60 kilometers on Ukrainian soil in the same time frame, despite large budgets. The main element triggering this momentum loss is hidden in the sky. Rybar, one of Russia's popular military bloggers, sounded the alarm by reporting that approximately 70 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles are descending on every single Russian soldier in the field. Intelligence experts summarize this mechanism quite plainly. When a soldier on the ground moves, tries to dig a trench, or an armored vehicle starts its engine, dozens of FPV devices instantly turn that element into a target. The advance of large armored columns is effectively coming to a standstill against this threat descending from above. Reported casualty figures more than confirm this absolute supremacy in the sky. It has been recorded that Ukrainian forces took 7,740 Russian vehicles out of action in May. An average of 256 vehicles are being taken out of action per day, with this number reaching up to 542 on some days when operations intensified. The fact that equipment losses since the start of the invasion have exceeded 100,700 units means a heavy loss that the war industry will struggle to replace. Logistics and military infrastructure are being constantly eroded under this uninterrupted pressure from above. The fact that 8 Russian occupiers are taken out of action at the front for every 1 Ukrainian soldier lost constitutes one of the strongest pieces of evidence showing how massed manpower has become helpless against technological capability. While thousands of armored platforms are taking damage in the field and brigades are being depleted in their positions, these harsh realities are not reaching the desks of decision-makers in the Kremlin with the same clarity. The weakest point of a rigid authoritarian structure is the dysfunctional information filtering mechanisms that operate from bottom to top. These lies, spun by the generals from their desks, dealt a blow of exactly $1 billion to the Russian oil economy, as we will see shortly. A commander in the field hesitates to report his heavy casualties to headquarters because the price of failure is usually dismissal, or facing even harsher sanctions. By the time the information chain reaches the general staff level, and from there to the head of state's desk, it has transformed into a smooth, virtual victory tableau, completely detached from the harsh reality on the ground. The most concrete evidence of this bureaucratic delusion came to light with a military document leaked to digital platforms on May 28th. Open-source researchers exposed an internal operations map belonging to the Russian Defense Ministry dated April 9th. This document, which Institute for the Study of War experts carefully examined and found authentic, depicted the situation on the western Zaporizhia front as a completely fictional success story. On the map, approximately 12 towns actually under Ukrainian forces' control were marked as having passed to Russian control, and non-existent infiltration operations toward the strategic Orikhiv area were shown as successful. The press statements made by Gerasimov, the #1 figure in the command echelon, clearly showed how these fake maps have been integrated into the institution's official language. In that grandiose briefing, it was claimed that 1,700 square kilometers of area and 80 settlements had been captured since the beginning of the year. However, independent satellite data and geolocation analyses proved that the actual advance in the same time frame was only 381.5 square kilometers and 13 settlements. The fact that claimed gains are nearly 5 times the ground reality reveals how the state mechanism has blinded itself. The special assessment reports prepared by the Institute for the Study of War underline in bold the strategic dangers that this information poisoning could create. These inflated success drafts that the command echelon regularly presents to the leader are building a false confidence in the head of state that the war is being won. A mechanism floating in delusions continues to consume large budgets for non-existent objectives at the table and to direct exhausted brigades to imaginary fronts. While fake maps are stripping the Kremlin of its ability to read the reality on the ground, they are pulling an entire country's economic resources into a great vortex. While Moscow lives in this victory euphoria of its own making, the real crisis on the ground is reaching a severe dimension on the Crimean Peninsula. In the files, Crimea is presumably depicted as an impregnable fortress with reinforced surroundings. However, the autonomous drone wall established in the sky is slowly cutting the peninsula's logistical jugular veins by descending to a depth of 200 kilometers. The logistics lockdown program has transformed this blockade into a systematic doctrine with budgets of billions of hryvnias. Resupply convoys, strategic ammunition depots, fuel tankers, and command centers now reside directly within the hunting ground. A permanent blockade effect is being created by preventing occupying elements from feeling safe even hundreds of kilometers behind the front line. The effects of this invisible siege manifest themselves with military and civilian cargo movement on the peninsula coming to a standstill. With orders entering into force in June, the R280 and A291 highways were closed to military shipment traffic. Independent analysts and data platforms detected a 71% drop in highway cargo traffic within just 14 days following the closure of these main arteries. Logistics shipments are forced to divert to muddy and unsafe back roads. Every truck whose travel speed decreases transforms into a fairly easy target for autonomous hunters waiting in the sky. Units positioned at the geographical extremes are paying the bill of severed supply lines with harsh conditions. The 337th Regiment personnel stationed on the Kinburn Peninsula are experiencing a major breakdown due to diminishing food rations and difficulty accessing clean water. Soldiers are stuck between abandoning their positions and becoming targets for munitions descending from the sky. This atmosphere of desperation carries a potential that could lead to discipline breakdowns among lower ranks. Civilian transportation on the Crimean railway network is constantly being suspended under the pretext of aviation dangers. The cancellation of more than 10 passenger trains departing from Moscow and the bringing of operations at key logistics hubs like Jankoy to a halt is physically severing the peninsula's ties with the mainland. The reflections of systematic isolation on civilian life are triggering a rising crisis wave in society. The depletion of basic consumer goods on market shelves is fueling panic. The rationing of AI-92 and AI-95 fuel distribution to coupons and quotas in port cities like Sevastopol shows the scale of the crisis. The 40% drop in tourism revenue is freezing the regional economy. The most striking development was Russia's energy ministry officially admitting that unmanned aerial vehicle attacks are causing nationwide gasoline shortages. While civilian institutions are acknowledging the reality, the rosy maps presented by the military command lay bare the dimensions of the disconnect in the state mechanism. While logistics lines take heavy damage in the field and soldiers are depleted in their positions, this institutional blindness maintained in the Kremlin's gilded halls is restaging one of the striking recurrences of Russian history. The most serious threat a state apparatus can face is not the enemy tanks on the horizon, but rather the isolated virtual reality bubble that its own elites have constructed. Decisions made on the basis of smooth reports laid out on tables are turning into a structural trap that slowly erodes the system from within. Exactly 239 years ago, in 1787, Prince Potemkin had presented Empress Catherine II with a grand illusion of prosperity in these same Crimean lands. Fake buildings made of wooden facades, hollow villages, had been built as proof of power and unquestionable stability. Today on the same lands, in an environment where infantrymen running out of ammunition await help and civilian vehicles wait in fuel queues for days, today's generals are presenting the leader with digital Potemkin maps. However, in the modern warfare environment, where asymmetric offensive concepts know no boundaries, the shelf life of these desktop fictions is quite short. Strategic facilities taking damage one after another, hundreds of kilometers deep inside Russia, are tearing away that fake cover. Deep strike operations are carrying the heavy effects of the war directly to the heart of the civilian population and industrial centers. While the leader tells stability tales at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum podium, a critical ammunition center at the Kronstadt Naval Base, just 30 kilometers from the event venue, is being targeted. The facility, housing 5,000 tons of ammunition, is being rendered unusable by explosions that light up the night. Although official media outlets try to reflect this major destruction to the public as a simple coal fire, orbital satellite sensors immediately detect high heat sources and lift the curtain over the truth. The strategic targeting range expands further with each passing month, and the traditional defense depth offered by geographical size is losing its importance. In western Siberia, the Antipinsky refinery, located 2,000 kilometers deep from the war's ground zero, is becoming a target of autonomous aerial vehicles. This energy base, with a large processing capacity of 180,000 barrels per day, suffers heavy damage as a result of intensive hits. Key infrastructure at the Novorossiysk terminal, considered the lifeline of Black Sea oil trade, is being hit. The NII Multiplotechniki Torpedo Research Center, known for its 76-year history, is taking successive hits and losing its R&D capabilities. The fact that facilities can be readily struck at such depths within the country proves how permeable the air defense umbrella expected to protect critical industrial bases actually is. The economic bill of these borderless asymmetric strikes opens deep gaps in the state budget that are very difficult to repair. According to reports prepared by independent research platforms, deep strike operations conducted in May alone created direct material damage exceeding $1 billion in the Russian economy. In the same period, 18 key oil and natural gas facilities were forced to slow down or completely shut down their production lines. According to energy market experts' calculations, approximately 25% of the total refining capacity in central regions has effectively gone offline. A refinery taking heavy damage in the depths of Siberia means an armored truck carrying logistics cargo on the Zaporizhia front, thousands of kilometers to the south, running out of fuel and being struck in open terrain. This delicate domino reaction reveals, beyond the optimistic file sitting on the table, how harsh the real world on the ground truly is. These deep ruptures in logistics lines are now being voiced aloud in the upper economic bureaucracy. Finance officials are forwarding warning reports to higher authorities that the war economy cannot be sustained for long at this intense cost momentum. The cumulative balance created by the combination of heavy sanctions imposed and domestic production losses is subjecting the state treasury to a major stress test. Even selling oil at discounted prices to alternative Asian markets is proving insufficient to compensate for the budget holes that have opened. While reading this entire picture, it is of great importance to keep the dynamics of the situation on a balanced footing. Thinking that the military structure before us will completely dissolve within a few months may be an optimistic error frequently made in strategic analyses. The country still maintains approximately 700,000 military personnel in the field. The nuclear arsenal stands as the greatest deterrence card. Heavy industrial complexes continue to produce ammunition in shift systems, despite all the inefficiency that has formed. The army's effort to advance and establish mass pressure at key transportation nodes like Pokrovsk is tangibly felt. Authoritarian regimes' crisis adaptation reflexes have historically been able to show surprising resilience. Commander-in-Chief Syrski's critical warnings for the approaching autumn period indicate that the conflict on the ground has not yet ended, and that harsher confrontations may be experienced. However, the most evident truth is that initiative and momentum are largely shifting direction. While casualty mathematics on the battlefield is evolving into a completely new formula, advanced asymmetric autonomous systems are slowly neutralizing traditional fire superiority based on brute force in the field. As the Crimean Peninsula faces a quiet but effective logistics blockade, facilities deep inside the country are going offline one after another. American military strategist General Jack Keene's commentary on the situation clarifies the current picture. Advantage and momentum have now passed to the other side. The Army's maneuver capability and air superiority on the ground are eroding within a narrowing timeframe. While bureaucrats continue to pile fake victory reports on the table to protect their positions, drones operating in the field are delivering a heavy bill. The leadership mechanism may design grand conquest scenarios in the echo chamber it has built, but the reality outside is leaving that structure facing a serious test by breaking Moscow's fundamental military doctrines from within. In those stormy first months of 2022, the Kremlin, which had tied itself to the optimistic advance reports prepared by the bureaucracy, had paid the heavy price of the grand illusion it built. After years of difficult experiences, today the decision-making mechanism continues to operate as a captive of the same information pollution and fake maps that do not reflect reality. The rules of the field. Produce results at their own tempo without listening to plans on paper, while Ukrainian forces are step by step. Reclaiming the 600 square kilometer area, Crimea is quietly being isolated through an invisible logistics blockade, and refineries are being forced to halt their operations. At those very same tables where administrators were occupied with wooden Potemkin villages exactly 239 years ago, Today, fake advance reports constructed with pixels are being approved. The greatest threat a state can face is not the armies on the horizon, but rather believing in the loyalty lies it has woven around itself. While maps on the table shout victory, the realities on the ground are quietly eroding the system. In your opinion, how will this structural information disconnect and technological asymmetry in the decision-making mechanism shape the balances on the ground in the coming period? You can share your thoughts with us in the comments section. To follow geopolitical developments closely and be immediately informed of the detailed analyses we prepare, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for choosing us.